Badlands. Explain those Badlands. That's a hell of a name.
Send the arrow on the doorpost, saying this land is condemned. All the way from New Orleans to Jerusalem. I travel where many martyrs fell, and I know one thing: nobody can sing them blues like Blind or Willie McTell. Well, I heard the Rudolphs singing as they were taking down the tents.
All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Geopolitics with Ghost. Today is January 3rd, 2026. I am your host, Gordon McCormick, the ghost of bass Patrick Henry. Thank you for joining us today. Starting to return to a little bit of normalcy with the schedule, personal life schedule. My kids have been out of school for like 10 days, it feels like. They're still out of school, or at least some of them are. But yeah, that's just the polar vortex or whatever they're calling it. How's the chat doing? Let's put the chat on screen. I see real quick right out the gate, I see KPZZ87. I would love to see more in-depth single-focus documented stuff like the history of East India Trading Company. That's a great comment. I would encourage you to go search. So here, let me pull up on screen. Because we did do multiple episodes, at least one, but I think we did multiple episodes dedicated to the East India Company on Breaking History. That's the show where Matt Arrett and I, sometimes we cover, a lot of times, typically lately, we've been covering like the news cycle through the lens of history, but we were in the past, and we probably will start doing it again. I know we're going to do it this Wednesday, where we pick a subject and we focus on like a deep dive on a subject. So I think this week we're going to do Xi Jinping, and it's going to be more modern stuff. It's not going to be a history, but specifically what's going on over there with the coup. He has contacts that he's talking to. He's trying to gather his information. But so if you go to, let me pull up my screen. Go to the Badlands Media Rumble page. So when you land on the Rumble page, go to playlists right here. So when you land on the Rumble page, go to playlists, and then scroll down and look for Breaking History, which is going to be somewhere on here. Here it is. And you got to scroll way back, but it's probably going to be episode like 25. Let me see. I'll just find it for you. Episode, because that was a good episode. Yeah, so we have Understanding the British. So I think my first episode with him was episode 18. That was my first time being on the show. And then Understanding I think we immediately went right into the East India Company because I was already like studying that at the time. So it'd be episode 19. And then I think episode 21, we went back and we did, if I'm not mistaken, that was the Palestine Exploration Fund, was episode 21. And then we kind of like kept going back to those kind of subjects. So yeah, just check out all of those. Like in the 20s, you're going to get a lot right here. Episode 31, that was a really good one. That was the United Fruit Company. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, War Hamster may have joined us for that. He may or may not have, but if he didn't, he came on other episodes and talked about that. 37, The Untold History of Zionism. 38, Understanding Turkey's Ottoman Revivalism. So there's a lot of episodes where we go deep into that stuff. I would just encourage you to go back and just search the archives. And I think a lot of these titles are being made by AI. So it like creates the transcript and then extracts the episode title. Sometimes I know Matt was creating the episode title himself sometimes. And then sometimes it looks like there weren't episode titles in the early days. But anyway, I digress. Good question, though. I appreciate that commentary. And if you have suggestions for show topics, whether it's this show or the Book of Trump or Breaking History, throw them in the chat, throw them in the comments, because I'm always looking for places to go. I kind of have my own curriculum laid out, but happy to make detours. But anyway, I digress. Let's get back to the information at hand. So we have a lot of things happening. Obviously, the Epstein files dropped at some point after, I think, the show on Friday. It may have happened during or maybe even before the show, but I wasn't paying attention to that. But so we're going to talk about a few Epstein things that came out. I do want to point, before we go there, let's talk about what's happening in Saudi right now. So this is, I guess there's no sound on this. Yeah, no sound. But so this is Erdogan arriving in Riyadh. Sorry, I thought I was sharing my screen. So Erdogan arriving in Riyadh to meet with MBS, and he's getting the full Trump treatment. Not the full Trump treatment, because the Trump treatment would mean white horses and stallions, but he is getting the treatment, so to speak, right? I mean, this is the Saudi foreign ministry putting together this video, I believe. Looks like there's somebody threw their watermark on it, but I'm pretty sure this whole video was put out by the Saudi foreign ministry. You're not going to get some random ex-blogger or whatever getting this close to MBS and Erdogan. And obviously a lot of that stuff was filmed by drones. They're not just going to let somebody fly their drone around this. This is a big deal, though. This is a really big deal because, the shifting dynamics in the Middle East and how that security architecture is going to look. And by that, I mean, how do we prevent the Middle East falling back into the quagmire of war? A balance of power, peace through strength, right? We need strong nation states that are earnestly seeking their best interest, their self-interest, and collaborating with other strong nation states seeking their self-interest, kind of like what we have seen in Europe and the United States and, the Western Hemisphere, the Atlantic Hemisphere, you should say, the Anglosphere, for the past 70 years. But strong nation states earnestly seeking their own self-interest, even though a lot of that stuff was all manipulated and there was a lot of bad action. That's how you prevent war, though. That's why you haven't had a war in Europe since World War II. Part of the reason is that when strong nation states are earnestly seeking their best interest, you can bypass the desire to engage in kinetic conflict because the incentive isn't there. The incentive is only there if the people conducting the war think they're going to enrich themselves, whether that enrichment comes from material wealth, like plundering a foreign nation, political wealth, political power, clout, public support, like all of those things are incentives for going to war. But if by going to war with a foreign country, you're going to hurt yourself economically, you're going to hurt yourself politically, you're going to hurt yourself in all those various ways, then the incentive is not to go to war, or at least not kinetic war. Maybe they end up engaging in other forms of warfare. But, you know, a cyber war or an information war is far less costly from a human life standpoint than a kinetic war, obviously. And if you could imagine, if we could have a prolonged peace in the Middle East, imagine what could actually be achieved there, what could actually be built there if we don't have these little militias running around starting fires everywhere and destabilizing governments. So that's what this represents. It has everybody, all the right people are very pissed off about this. They don't want Turkey and Saudi Arabia working together. They don't want Turkey and Iran working together. They definitely don't want Saudi Arabia and Iran working together. And yet that's exactly what we're getting. And if we go to Arab News, ArabNews.com is basically the closest thing you're going to get to like Saudi state media. Is at least my understanding, and you can go and look at it right now. I'm just zooming out for you. The big story, of course, is the Saudi prince receives Turkish president in Riyadh, and then the next story, from today, Saudi prince holds telephone call with Russian president. We'll look at that story, and then the next story is deal with Iran unimaginable. Pompeo tells WGS, which is the World Government Summit in Dubai. We'll look at that story too. And then the next story after that, of course, is U.S. envoy Wickoff meets Netanyahu in Jerusalem. So we're definitely going to look at that story. I just happened to scroll past this. New Saudi ambassador to UK presents credentials to Britain's King Charles III. I mean, so Khalid bin Bandar. Why does that name ring a bell? Would that be Bandar's son? It must be. Abdullah bin Khalid. Let's check out who this guy is real quick. Just a quick little side quest here. Abdullah of Saudi Arabia. No way. That's not Abdullah of Saudi Arabia. That's Abdullah of Jordan. Yeah, sometimes I think Google's retarded. And they don't really know how to. I mean, the Google, and I think that's what Brave uses. Brave uses some form of Google, but Google is utterly retarded now. You put something in Google and it just spits out just slop, absolute slop. All right, so let's pivot to some of these stories. So let's go first to that first news article and just read about it. They're probably not going to give us much. Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman received Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan at Al Yamama Palace in Riyadh on Tuesday. An official reception ceremony was held to welcome Erdogan, and the two leaders held sessions of talks, etc. Yeah, I mean, the Saudis play everything pretty close to the chest. They're not going to publicly announce anything until there's something to announce. Kind of respect that, but you know, they're not a democracy, so they don't need to worry about that kind of thing. All right, let's go look at the phone call with the Russian president. Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman held a telephone conversation with Russian President Vladimir Putin on Tuesday, the Saudi press agency reported. During the call, the two leaders reviewed Saudi-Russian relations. They also discussed existing areas of cooperation between the two countries and ways to support and develop them. SPA added regional and international developments and a number of issues of common interest were also discussed. So this is obviously setting up this meeting that's going to happen tomorrow in the UAE, and we'll pivot there here in a minute. Before we do, let's just take a look at these other two stories, which I'm not familiar with, but I'll just read through them. So the first one is deal with Iran unimaginable, and this actually is a nice little table setter for the UAE story. Pompeo tells WGS in Dubai. Let's listen to what Pompeo has to say.
I think that the region has gone through various calamitous confrontations. I don't think we need another one. but I would like to see direct Iranian American negotiations leading to understandings that we don't have these issues every other day. We don't have what I would call a UAE agenda in Gaza. We have to work with the Palestinians. We have to work with the Egyptians, the Israelis, the Jordanians, and of course, an American leadership is key, really, for achieving a sort of, I won't say sustainable solution at this time, but moving on with the part two of President Trump's plan. We all need to work together in Gaza in order to come out from an aftermath that has been a total disaster, and recognize also that the way forward is political and the way forward is addressing Palestinian statehood and Israeli security at the same time.
No, it's unimaginable that there can be a deal to me. We've had a deal with the Iranians multiple times. They have cheated and lied and avoided compliance with every deal they've signed. I watched President Trump. I was there. I recommended to the president that he withdraw from the previous nuclear deal that we had agreed to under President Obama. I think they may come away with some set of understandings, but to think that there's a long-term solution that actually provides stability and peace to this region while the Ayatollah is still in power is something I pray for, but find unimaginable. Iran would be wise to find a way forward that is fundamentally different. Wise not just for America and for the region, but for the Iranian people. It's hard for me to see the current leadership, the current regime actually change in that way. And so I think President Trump will continue to be determined to try and drive that.
It's going to be hilarious to see Pompeo just get totally rugged because he's basically guaranteeing there's not going to be an Iran nuclear deal with the United States, and yet that is exactly what is being signaled right now by Wickoff and Trump. You know, they keep talking about the Ayatollah, and I mentioned this on Badlands Daily this morning. They keep like harping about the Ayatollah, the Ayatollah, the Ayatollah, the Ayatollah. I need proof of life that the Ayatollah is still alive. I do not think the Ayatollah is alive. If the Ayatollah is alive, he's on hospice care. Because he was on hospice care last summer. Do you remember when Iran was getting bombed out by Israel? Like Israel was bombing Iran. Iran was bombing Israel. I think Israel actually took it harder on the chin than Iran did. But they were both like taking blows, right? And then Trump kind of brought in the B2s, or at least the narrative B2s, and bombed the nuclear sites and said, all right, it's a 12-day war. It's over. Everyone stop. The Ayatollah was nowhere to be found. And the reason he was nowhere to be found allegedly was because he was there. I saw a picture of him in the hospital bed. Who knows if that was a real picture? Who knows if it was actually from June? But at least the rumor is that he was bedridden in a hospital somewhere. And that's why he wasn't manning the ramparts. He wasn't appearing on television. He wasn't doing any of those things. And my understanding is that his body's failing. He's old. He's dying, right? He's probably already dead. I mean, that would be my guess, is that he's dead. And the reason they haven't announced it is because that would then require a new Ayatollah, right? A new religious leader to be selected. And I just kind of think they're pivoting away from that. I think that pillar of their society has probably lost power, because who have we been hearing from for the past year in Iran? Hasn't been the Ayatollah. It's been Pezeshkian. It's been Arakchi, right? It's these political leaders who are far more moderate, who dress like Western businessmen, right? I mean, at least somewhat. Like they wear like the kind of like the Chinese, like Eastern, like Asian shirt, like the collarless button-up shirt. That's what they're always wearing. They don't dress like the Ayatollah. Like they don't dress like those guys, the mullahs. And then when Pompeo talks about a nuclear, like you know, we did a nuclear deal before, and they lied and they cheated and did they lie and they cheat and they steal? I mean, I'm pretty sure that we secretly sent them like $400 million in cash secretly. And according to Trump, we had to empty out every bank in Northern Virginia and Maryland in order to get all that money together, all the cash together. Why were we secretly sending them pallets of cash? Of course, they're going to accept a deal where we secretly give them pallets of cash, right? I also think that, you know, the people who were involved in that situation on the Iranian side were arrested. We know for a fact they were arrested in August of 2018, that the the governor of the Iran Central Bank, which is not part of the Rothschild banking network. It's outside of that, as is the Venezuelan Central Bank and a few others. He was arrested. A few other high-level bankers were arrested. We don't know what they were arrested for, but they were accused of corruption. My guess is that they were laundering the money that was being sent to them by Obama, and probably that money was being used to build out a network of operatives and probably a network of militias across the region by Soleimani. That's my guess. And then when we killed Soleimani, that basically pulled the bottom block out and caused the whole tower to topple over, right? So yeah, we'll see what happens with what Pompeo is talking about. But he's basically assuring everyone that we're not going to see this deal. Okay, well, let's see what happens on Friday. U.S. Envoy Wickoff. So right now, as we covered on Badlands Daily, the schedule is today. Wickoff is in Jerusalem meeting with Netanyahu. That's what we're going to look at right here. Tomorrow he goes to Dubai, and they're going to, in Abu Dhabi, and they're going to be in Abu Dhabi with the Russians and the Ukrainians. They'll be there, I think, tomorrow and Thursday, and then Friday he hops on a plane and flies to Ankara to Turkey, and then meets with the Iranians there, and that's where they're supposedly going to negotiate a nuclear deal. It doesn't mean we're going to get the announcement of a deal that day, but they're at least going to be negotiating that. So we'll see when the deal actually gets announced. But the story is U.S. Envoy Wickoff meets Netanyahu in Jerusalem, Israeli official. U.S. Envoy Steve Wickoff held talks with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on Tuesday, an Israeli official said. During a visit that followed the reopening of Gaza's Rafah crossing with Egypt, the official told AFP that the meeting was taking place in Jerusalem, but declined to provide details on the agenda. It came as the United States was expected to hold talks with Israel's arch foe, Iran, later this week. An Arab official speaking on condition of anonymity told AFP that the meeting was likely to take place in Turkey on Friday, following diplomatic interventions by Ankara, as well as Egypt, Oman, and Qatar. Wickoff's talks with Netanyahu on Tuesday marked his second encounter with the Israeli prime minister in less than a fortnight. His previous visit took place days before the Rafah crossing was open. Israeli media reported at the time that Wickoff and fellow U.S. envoy Jared Kushner had pressed for the reopening of the crossing. Yeah, so we're going to keep going down this rabbit hole a little deeper. But before we do, one story that I didn't share on Badlands Daily this morning, I think we just kind of ran out of time, was this one. Let me go to Monday's edition. So as part of the Epstein drops, and we're not going to get into the Epstein stuff yet, but since this one is specifically related to MBS, I just thought I'd mention it. So this email has been circulating, has been going viral, and it's between Jeffrey Epstein and this guy, Anas al-Rashid. And if this is the same al-Rashid that I'm thinking of, I don't know if it is, but basically when the second Saudi kingdom was eliminated, destroyed in 1891, the operatives that were sent to do that were the al-Rashid clan, which is like the rival clan of the Saudis. They were sent there by the Ottomans. The Ottomans paid them to go do this. And basically they ruled Riyadh, or the ruins of Riyadh and Diriyah, for, I guess it was about 10 years. Because in 1901, that was when the original MBS, or I'm sorry, not the original MBS, but Ibn Saud, MBS's grandfather, forms the Muslim Brotherhood and then goes into Diriyah and takes back control of his hometown, kind of like the prodigal son returning to seek to exact revenge, like Monte Cristo, right? I thought he wiped out all the al-Rashid clan, but it would be interesting if this was the same al-Rashid, but we'll figure that out another time. It says right here, let me figure out, I'm getting in the right order here. So we have the first email goes out Friday, October 12th, 2018. It says they're talking about the Khashoggi killing. And they say, it says, smells like something bigger to me. I wouldn't be surprised if MBZ set him up, because they're talking about the fact that MBS is being framed as like is being accused by the CIA as killing him. And then Anas al-Rashid responds, ugly, very ugly. And then Jeffrey Epstein responds, what I'm told, secondary source, is that one of the assassins, quote unquote, put the video on his phone. I think he's referring to MBS, and then it was hacked. And that would be, I mean, they would use something akin to like the Pegasus software, which is developed by the NSO Group, which is an Israeli firm. The Pegasus software, I'm pretty sure, could do all of those things. Could probably put the video on his phone, and they could probably hack his phone, and then they could say, look at the video we pulled off of MBS's phone. And then al-Rashid responds, can they label him a terrorist? Covert op gone bad, honey trap Turks, MHZ. I don't know if he means MBZ or MHZ, but and then al-Rashid. I don't know if this is al-Rashid or no. This is Jeffrey Epstein's the one saying this, saying what I'm told is that the secondary source is that one of the assassins put the video on his phone. He then replies again and says, can they label him a terrorist? Covert op gone bad, honey trap Turks. And then it appears that al-Rashid then responds back and says, MBZ asked me to come over and see him ASAP, leaving in the morning. So anyway, this email has led to like widespread speculation that MBS was set up and that he was framed for the Khashoggi killing, something that I have been saying since the very beginning that I think happened. Now, Epstein is speculating that MBZ is the one who set him up. That would be the current president of the UAE. At this time, he would have been the Emir of Abu Dhabi, so like the mayor of Abu Dhabi, but not yet the president of the UAE. That didn't happen until 2022. I don't think that's true. It could be true, but I don't think that's true. The timing of this is very interesting because we have this narrative that is evolving over the past, I don't know, month or two, maybe 3 months, that there's a rift between MBS and MBZ. Even though MBZ has always been MBS's most vocal supporter, he's been the guy, he's been advocating for MBS all over the place. There's a very close relationship between the Emiratis and the Saudis. Geopolitically, they're kind of considered the closest allies. It was the UAE ambassador, Youssef Al-Otaiba, who introduced, basically, when MBS and the Saudis went to him, and MBS went to MBZ in 2014, and was like, I needed to develop contacts in the United States. I need to get political support from the United States. MBZ put him in touch with Youssef Al-Otaiba, who's the ambassador from the UAE to the United States. And Youssef Al-Otaiba said, well, there's only one guy to talk to if you want an advocate in the US, and that's Tom Barrack. And that's President Trump's best friend. And then Tom Barrack, of course, puts the Saudis in touch with President Trump and Donald Trump at the time. And of course, allegedly it was Youssef Al-Otaiba's idea between him and Tom Barrack to say, hey, these guys are the same age, Jared Kushner and MBS, we should just connect those two. And they should basically become the conduit between the Trump administration and the Saudis. And so that was how the relationship formed between Jared Kushner and MBS. And it was all done through the Emiratis. So I'm inclined to believe that a lot of this narrative that's coming out where there's this big fight between the Emiratis and the Saudis is that's all kayfabe. I think it would be really interesting if that ends up being the truth, because if the Arabs are engaging in kayfabe with one another, then that means they have fully embraced Trumpomania, and they see the value in that kind of deception from a narrative standpoint. And there's reasons why I could see them doing that. There's reasons why I could see the Saudis and the Emiratis kind of distancing themselves from one another so that they can embark on these separate missions to kind of gather support among various geopolitical factions. For example, the Saudis are now pivoting hard to Turkey and Iran, right? While the Emiratis have pivoted hard to India. You saw like right when the Saudis have also pivoted to Pakistan. So the Saudis go and they cut a deal with Pakistan to this kind of Article 5 NATO style deal where anyone who attacks Pakistan or Saudi Arabia has attacked the other. Right? Pakistan and India are arch rivals. They're arch nemesis, right? They're one of the 8 conflicts that Trump's trying to resolve. So if the Saudis go to one side of the conflict, Pakistan, and they say, we're your guy. And then right after that deal is announced, the Emiratis, they announce a deal with India, and they go to India and they say, all right, India's our like we're on Team India, right? And the fact that there's this narrative void between them, there's I wouldn't call it a breakup quite yet, but it certainly seems to be heading in that direction, at least narratively. That kind of benefits this effort to gather up all these different parties geopolitically outside of the Middle East who fall on one side or the other, right? India has always been deeply in bed with Israel and Britain because of the British East India Company, to the poster's point earlier, asking about the British East India Company. Because of that history, India has always been under the influence of Britain, under the influence of the Zionists, under the influence of the Rothschilds, under the influence of those types, right? And so India always falls kind of on the same side as Israel. Israel supported India in that India-Pakistan fight that happened earlier last year. So there's a lot of benefit, I think, from this split. But we're really seeing most of it happen in Sudan. Sudan is where, in Yemen, that's where at least narratively, the Saudis and the Emiratis are backing different horses, and that hasn't been a huge problem until now, but now it's become a problem. So we'll see what ends up happening there, but we'll kind of table that narrative for a minute. Let's pivot back to what's happening with Wickoff, because we have. Let me pull up. Well, I guess since I already have this one pulled up, let's scroll up to the videos that I played on Badlands Daily this morning. So Trump asked if he is going to start a war with Iran.
Some people think that, some people don't. You can make a negotiated deal that would be satisfactory with no nuclear weapons, and they should do that, but I don't know that they will, but they are talking to us. Seriously talking to us.
They're seriously talking to us. So then you have this article that comes out. This is from yesterday. U.S. not ready to strike Iran, according to the Wall Street Journal. It says an attack is not imminent. American officials have told the outlet the U.S. is not ready to strike Iran as it needs to deploy more air defenses in the Middle East to be able to repel a possible retaliation. The Wall Street Journal has reported, citing unnamed American officials, over the past few weeks, Washington has dispatched what U.S. President Donald Trump described as a massive and beautiful armada to the Middle East, led by the USS Abraham Lincoln aircraft carrier, to pressure Tehran into accepting a new nuclear deal. Despite the buildup, American airstrikes on Iran aren't imminent because Washington needs to make sure that Israel, its Arab allies, and U.S. forces in the region are properly protected. The Wall Street Journal said in an article on Sunday, citing its sources, the Pentagon is currently moving additional THAAD battery and Patriot air defense systems to bases hosting U.S. troops in Jordan, Kuwait, Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and elsewhere, defense officials told the outlet. After the U.S. and Israel bombed the Iranian nuclear facilities last June, Tehran responded with attacks on Israel, as well as by striking the Al Udeid American air base in Qatar. The damage to the U.S. facility was limited due to the Iranians giving advance warning to Washington. So there you go. Like, if you're in a real war with someone, you're not calling them up and saying, hey, man, I'm about to bomb this building at this air base. Just want to let you know so you can get all your guys out of there. Thanks, bye. It's like, you don't, like, that's not how you fight a war. I mean, and Trump himself has said that back when he was a candidate in like 2015. He used to make fun of Obama for holding press conferences to announce their attack plan before they would actually attack, right? Iran's supreme leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei warned on Sunday that any U.S. military action would have far-reaching consequences across the Middle East, saying that, quote, they should know that if they start a war this time, it will be a regional war. Later in the day, Trump dismissed Khamenei's remarks, but left the door open to diplomacy. Quote, of course he is going to say that, the president noted. Hopefully we'll make a deal. If we don't make a deal, then we'll find out whether or not he was right. The head of Iran's Supreme National Security Council, Ali Larijani, who held talks with Russian President Vladimir Putin in Moscow on Friday, said that progress was being made toward negotiations with the U.S. Now, if that name sounds familiar, the Supreme National Security Council and Ali Larijani, that's because last Wednesday when we did the special episode on Iran devolution, those are the two names that were at the center of that story. It was the Supreme National Security Council that created that activated Article 176 of the Iran Constitution to create what they call the Defense Council, and the Defense Council is the one that devolved the powers of the government to these 31 regional governors. And it was Ali Larijani was the one who was like speaking to the press about it, the one who was basically disclosing all of this to the press, that they were entering a continuity of government protocol, right? So the fact that he's the one who's now talking to Putin and kind of at the center of this narrative now is pretty encouraging to me, because it speaks to that devolution development. So here is I don't know if this is an op-ed or an article. I don't think it really matters what you call it, but from RT from yesterday, did Russia just help buy time for Iran to make a deal with the U.S.? Mediation efforts reportedly coincide with a pause in Washington's military pressure on Iran or on Tehran. After weeks of ratcheting up pressure on Iran and openly floating the use of U.S. military force, Donald Trump has in recent days struck a more cautious tone, leaving the door open to diplomacy, even as Washington continues to reinforce its military posture in the Middle East. Some media reports suggest that mediation efforts, including Moscow, are underway to bring Washington and Tehran back to the negotiating table. When asked about Tehran, Trump told reporters on Sunday, hopefully we'll make a deal. Unnamed American officials cited by the Wall Street Journal also reportedly said that airstrikes against Iran aren't imminent, while noting the need to protect U.S. forces and regional allies. Over the past week, Washington has deployed more THAAD air systems, Patriot missile batteries, signaling that while the immediate threat of military action has eased, the U.S. retains the capacity to respond if needed. The core U.S. demands on any potential deal include limits on uranium enrichment and restrictions on Iran's ballistic missile program. Iran maintains that its nuclear program is purely peaceful. According to a report by the Kuwaiti newspaper Al Jarida on Monday, the likelihood of an imminent U.S. strike on Tehran is diminished, and diplomacy has been given a new chance following intensive efforts by mediators, primarily Russia and Turkey, along with Qatar. Russian President Vladimir Putin presented a set of proposals during talks in Moscow last week with the head of Iran's Supreme National Security Council, Ali Larijani, there he is again, prompting Trump to postpone any decision on military action to allow further discussion of the initiatives, an unnamed source told the paper. Okay, so let me just reread that paragraph, okay? Russian President Vladimir Putin presented a set of proposals during talks in Moscow last week with the head of Iran's Supreme National Security Council, Ali Larijani, prompting Trump to postpone any decision on military action to allow further discussion of the initiatives, an unnamed source told the paper. So it was Putin speaking to that same guy, Ali Larijani, presenting him with a set of proposals, ideas for how they can put this peace deal in place, right? And then because of that discussion between Putin and Larijani, Trump is now postponing any decision on military action. Do you see the sovereign alliance like at work here? I mean, even if we're just being fed a narrative, that's the narrative we're being fed, is that it's Putin running interference on behalf of Trump because the neocons are nipping at his ankles, demanding that he fire missiles immediately. It says the plan reportedly includes a proposal for Russia's state nuclear company, Rosatom, to manage and oversee limited uranium enrichment for civilian reactors inside Iran, ensuring enrichment stays within agreed limits, alongside guarantees that Tehran's ballistic program would not be used to initiate attacks against Israel or the United States. Russia has repeatedly said it believes the Iranian nuclear issue should be resolved through political and diplomatic means. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov has urged dialogue, warning that any forceful actions can only create chaos in the region and lead to very dangerous consequences. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov has stated that Moscow is ready to play a key role once again in reaching an agreement on Iran's nuclear program, similar to its involvement in the 2015 deal. Under the agreement officially known as the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, Iran agreed to enrich uranium level agreed to restrict uranium enrichment levels, reduce its stockpile of enriched uranium, and allow comprehensive inspections by the International Atomic Energy Agency. Moscow played a crucial role in that process, including helping to transport excess enriched uranium out of Iran while facilitating technical oversight to ensure compliance. The U.S. withdrew from the pact in May 2018, reimposing sanctions and prompting Iran to gradually resume some nuclear activities and restrict inspections, contributing to heightened tensions. Tensions have remained high since U.S. strikes on Iranian nuclear facilities last June, and amid Washington's promise to punish Iran for its crackdown on violent anti-government protests, as is often the case in high-stakes negotiations such as the recent Ukraine talks in Dubai. Details of diplomatic and mediation efforts are typically kept undisclosed until agreements are near to being finalized. Okay, so all of that is fascinating. I think that, again, you can kind of see the signal there. You can see the signal. The signal is very clear that this negotiation that isn't just between Trump, America and Iran. This is a negotiation between America, Iran, and Russia, with Turkey, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Egypt, all interested in the outcome because they obviously don't want a war in their backyard. I mean, Israel is kind of on the outside looking in because we know what they want. They want war with Iran. Everybody knows that, right? And to that point, let's go to Axios. I assume this article is by Barak Ravid. Let me pull that up. Yeah, here we go. All right, so this is from an hour ago. Iran risks Trump's ire with new diplomatic demands, provocations. Hold on. It says Iran has demanded changes to the venue and format of negotiations with the U.S. this Friday. Two sources with knowledge tell Axios. Meanwhile, the Iranian military conducted two provocations against U.S. vessels in the Gulf, according to U.S. officials. Why it matters, the incident and new demands risk pushing President Trump off the diplomatic path and toward the military option at a time when he has already assembled enormous firepower in the Gulf. Behind the scenes, the sources said the Iranians are walking back from understandings that were reached in recent days after several countries were already invited to participate in the talks. The Iranians want to move the talks from Istanbul to Oman. They also now want to hold them in a bilateral format, only with the U.S., rather than with several Arab and Muslim countries attending as observers. A source with knowledge said that that's because the Iranians want to limit the talks to nuclear issues and not discuss things like missiles and proxy groups that are priorities for other countries in the region. Meanwhile, the Iranian military took what a U.S. official described as two very aggressive actions toward U.S. vessels in the span of 6 hours. In the first incident, Revolutionary Guards fast gunboats attempted to board a U.S.-flagged commercial ship near the Strait of Hormuz. The Iranian boats scattered before a U.S. Navy destroyer arrived to escort the ship with support from the Air Force. No shots were fired. In the second incident, an Iranian drone with unclear intent flew near the USS Lincoln aircraft carrier and was shot down by an F-35 jet. CENTCOM spokesperson Captain Tim Hawkins said. Friction point, a U.S. official described both actions as very aggressive and noted they came just 6 hours apart. In the CENTCOM statement, Hawkins said continued Iranian harassment and threats in international waters and airspace will not be tolerated. Iran's unnecessary aggression near U.S. forces, regional partners, and commercial vessels increases risks of collision, miscalculation, and regional destabilization. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt told reporters that she spoke to Trump's envoy, Steve Witkoff, about the incidents in the Gulf and the new Iranian demands. Quote, as of right now, the talks with Iran are still scheduled, she said. The talks will continue later this week as far as we are concerned. Leavitt noted that Trump is committed to pursuing diplomacy first. It takes two to tango, and Trump is keeping all options on the table. The latest, Witkoff and Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi are expected to lead the two negotiating teams. Araghchi held calls on Tuesday with his Omani and Turkish counterparts and with the Prime Minister of Qatar. Meanwhile, Witkoff met in Israel with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Israeli officials say the meeting focused on Iran, and Netanyahu brought along Israeli Defense Forces Chief of Staff, Lieutenant General Eyal Zamir, Mossad Director David Barnea, and Military Intelligence Chief Major General Shlomi Binder. Binder? Is it Binder? Might be Binder. Okay, so let me just play another video that I think will, again, this is number one, like, who knows if these stories were being told? Who knows if these stories we are being told are even true? Like these stories of like the drone and the boat, like that could just be pure narrative. Who knows? But let's just, for the sake of argument, let's just assume that those two things actually happened and they actually were Iranian vessels, right? Listen to this video from Araghchi from a few days ago to CNN, and then let's evaluate.
I'm not concerned about war. What I'm concerned of is miscalculations and military operation based on misinformation and disinformation campaigns. It is obvious to us that there are certain elements, certain parties who want to drag President Trump into this war for their own benefits. And I think President Trump is wise enough to make the correct decision.
Yeah, so, I mean, think about that. Think about what Araghchi just said. Araghchi just said, I'm not worried about war. So he's basically saying, I'm not worried about us starting a war. Like, we're not going to start a war with the U.S. And the U.S., it sounds like he's pretty confident the U.S. is not going to start a war with Iran. And he's smart to say that, because why would we start a war with a country that not only has a very strong military, they do have a very strong military. You're fooling yourself. Anyone who thinks that Iran does not have a strong military is speaking from a position of ignorance. They have a very strong military. They would bloody up the U.S. if we went to a war with them. We would still beat them, right? If in a one-on-one fight, we probably would still win, but we would take our blows, right? But it's not just Iran we have to worry about. It would be Russia we'd have to worry about. It would be China we'd have to worry about, because both China and Russia, not only does Russia have a military security pact with Iran, they also have deep economic entanglement with Iran, as does China, energy dependency from the Chinese perspective. So you're going to be fighting Russia and Iran and China as well. And if it's not Chinese troops you're going to be fighting, you're definitely going to be dealing with, like, they're going to be running interference however they can to make life as difficult for the U.S. as they possibly can. So he's right to assume that Iran is kind of untouchable to a certain extent from at least the objective perspective. Now, when you throw like the ideological zealotry of Israel in there, because I would basically compare the Israeli regime to like everything we've been told about Iran and how they are zealots and they're basically like screaming jihadis, like running into the battlefield, like prepared to die as like suicide bombers, right? Like that's how we've always been told Iran basically behaves. That's basically what Israel is. Israel is basically the suicide bomber with the suicide vest on, fully prepared to take everybody to the afterlife with them. And the best demonstration of that is them bombing Iran last June. I mean, had we not stepped in and saved their ass, like Israel would have been destroyed by Iran. Iran was holding back significantly when they attacked Israel. Had they sent their biggest and baddest missiles, and had they sent, their full cachet of what they could have unleashed, they would have erased Tel Aviv. They would have erased, entire villages from Israel. They would have taken out their water supply, their electrical supply, like their energy production, all of it. And they could have if we hadn't stepped in. So That to me is a death wish by Israel. Like that is a suicide mission. It's a suicide vest, proverbially speaking. But what Arakchi also says here is he says, what I'm worried about is miscalculation. What I'm worried about is disinformation and misinformation then leading to bad outcomes, right? So that tells me that the guy is smart. He's nuanced. He's not a fool, right? He's calculating. And if he's worried about that, there's no reason to think that 3 days before they're supposed to meet with the U.S. on Friday, they're going to send a boat or a drone to go provoke an American warship, to go provoke an American commercial vessel. So my guess is that he also mentions at the very end, I'm worried about the bad actors around President Trump. I'm worried about them. Okay. So he's recognizing that there's a good twin and an evil twin in the United States. The good twin is Trump and the evil twin are, the Zionist sycophants. It's reasonable to conclude that there is a good twin and an evil twin in Iran as well. It's reasonable to conclude that if Arakchi and Pezeshkian represent the good twin, the reasonable negotiating partner, that there probably is a bad twin as well. And if there is a bad twin, it's probably in the IRGC, right? That was what Soleimani came out of, the thing that protects the Ayatollah, that creates the Ayatollah. It's kind of like the Praetorian Guard of Iran. And they said in the article that the gunboat that went and tried to board the U.S. commercial ship was an IRGC gunboat. So it's reasonable to conclude that that was a rogue act by the IRGC trying to basically thwart diplomacy between the U.S. and Iran, because from their perspective, they also want a war just like Israel wants the war, right? So I don't know. Like, it seems to me like Caroline Leavitt says, despite these things happening, we're still meeting on Friday. So my guess is that there's probably some misinformation going out there about Iran trying to subvert the deal, trying to subvert the meeting, saying we got to move it to Amman, we got to move it to wherever. I think they're probably better off having it in Turkey, right? That seems like a better move for Iran. From the Iranian perspective, if Pezeshkian and Arakchi are smart, they recognize that the best thing for them, if they actually view Israel as a threat and they want Israel to be preoccupied with something, because, you can hate something without destroying it, right? I mean, a lot of you would probably say that you hate our politicians, right? You hate our government. You hate the corrupt elements in our government, right? Does that mean that you're going to go pick up a gun and go kinetic on them? No. Right? Why? Because you're not a fool. You also probably have a moral center that would prevent you from doing that. So it's reasonable to conclude that even if some of these countries hate Israel and would like to see Israel see their demise or see their decline or whatever, they're not going to pick up a gun and do it themselves, right? They're just going to go about living their life. However, they probably would like to see Israel preoccupied with something, a shiny object, so they're not their focus isn't on them, right? And starting a conflict with them. Turkey being involved in Syria, Turkey being involved in the Gaza peace board, Turkey being involved in Gaza, like in the ISF, those are all shiny objects for Netanyahu and his friends to play with, to be distracted with, while Iran does what it needs to do, right? So emboldening Turkey and helping Erdogan and basically elevating Turkey as an actor in the region suits the interests of Iran, because Turkey is going to keep Israel distracted, right? While knowing full well that Israel is not starting a war with Turkey, because if they do, they're going to be at war with all of NATO. So if I'm Iran, I'm probably partnering with Turkey before I partner with anybody else. I'm like, all right, Turks, I'm using you as a human shield almost, right? Because if they want to get to me, they got to go through you, or they got to hit you. And there's no way they're going to hit you, because if they hit you, they activate Article 5. So the idea they're going to move the meetings to Amman and they're going to try to box Turkey out, I just don't buy that. I don't think that's smart diplomacy. It doesn't mean it's not true, but that's just the way I look at it. If I'm Iran, I'm trying to keep Turkey in the room, because Turkey is the shiny object that they need to keep Netanyahu distracted. Okay, so with that said, I want to check on one thing real quick. Let me just check something, because right now I think that if I'm not mistaken, guys, I think that Trump is doing something. Is Trump doing something? He's signing executive orders. But, I haven't heard anything about Gustavo Petro. Let me just check on this. Let's see what's going on. Because Gustavo Petro is supposed to go to the White House today, and I haven't heard anything about it. And if Trump is signing executive orders this afternoon, it doesn't appear it's started yet. When does Gustavo Petro fall into the mix? What? All right, this is a post from Mostly Peaceful Latinas. Nice name. Colombian President Gustavo Petro made a long, sad post saying he visited his mom and said goodbye in case Trump does something to him tomorrow when they meet in D.C. Trump putting the fear of God inside these Latin American wannabe dictators is a dream come true. Okay, is that actually true? Okay, so here is a post. All right, well, here's a picture. So they did meet. This is like 15 minutes ago, 16 minutes ago, he posted this. So they're meeting right now. I knew it. All right. Hold on. Just hold your horses. We got to see. Is this thing live right now? If it is, we're going to it. Nope, they don't have anything live right now. The last video they posted was from yesterday when he was signing stuff yesterday. Let me see if they have anything on X. Stand by for a second, everybody. Bear with me here. This is hilarious if he actually did this, though. All right, they're not live streaming right now. And I mean, they had some posts from like an hour ago. 2 hours ago, they had a post right here. All right, so this wasn't something that was live streamed. At least I don't think. And yeah, so this is the picture that the White House put out of him meeting with Petro. And of course, the top comments are, we should just arrest him while he's here. He's as bad as Maduro. It's like, yeah, I'm glad these people are not in charge of diplomacy for us, because they would be really stupid. Okay, so I want to go back. I want to go back to Petro's account. I want to see what Petro posted. All right, that Latina's account said that he did this. He posted it yesterday, and I definitely need a good laugh. Here it is. Is this it? This guy's pretty funny. I mean, I have like kind of enjoyed his humor. Here it is. Okay, so February 1st, we are facing the deepest decision against free participation in Colombian politics, and it comes from an electoral body that is not an independent referee, but an instrument of opposition to my government. It is the most serious since the electoral fraud of April 19th, 1970, and since the use of narco paramilitarism and its weapons and money to elect presidents from the current opposition. The response can be nothing less than the most resolute unity of the people. If the mass murderers return to power, they will fill Colombia with blood. If Colombia does not continue on the path of progress and just peace, we will never escape violence and injustice. Therefore, in the face of the coup, the response is not community. It is the social and political unity of the people. Massive and peaceful votes, the pact for life of all Colombian society, including our irrational opposition and citizen signatures to deepen the 1991 Constitution, are the way forward. And he is quote posting He is quote posting this other guy, Ricardo Arrieta, who says Danielle Coronel's strategic objective, a column that appears neutral but operates politically. And it goes on to say, why does everybody in this like Bolivar region of South America, why do they all have like Slavic names like Ivan and Pedrino and Vladimir? It's very strange. It's very strange. Okay, I'm gonna have to pick this apart later when I'm not wasting y'all's time. Okay, but an earlier post, this is from 2 days ago. He says, a crime against humanity begins, committed against the populations of southern Colombia who are being burned alive. The People's Intelligence already has all the evidence of where it comes from, and the corresponding complaints will be filed, which I myself make public. To the perpetrators of this act, I say right now, cease your crime against humanity. Is he referring to like fires? What is he talking about? Are there forest fires happening in Colombia? Huh. I haven't heard about any forest. I mean, there are definitely forest fires happening in southern South America. But when he says people are being burned alive in Colombia, I wasn't aware that there are fires in Colombia yet, but maybe there are. Interesting. Okay, well, so let's get to the post in question. It says, I begin my intense day of communication with the government of the United States. All right, you know what? Sorry to leave you hanging, but we're going to do an ad read before we get into this because it's not that time. All right. Geopolitics with Ghost. We'll be back here in a minute, and we'll have a good laugh with Petro.
I don't say this lightly. This lotion changes people.
My knuckles would actually start to crack. Started using the soft disclosure lotion, and I am very impressed. Even within just a few days, I've noticed a tremendous difference.
That's not a script. That's what happens when something actually works.
It puts the lotion on its skin or else it gets the hose again.
Yeah, that line keeps coming up. Because when you don't use it, your skin starts acting up.
Every single ingredient in soft disclosure is intentionally chosen. There's no filler ingredients. It is not like this BS product where they have a bunch of ingredients. Every ingredient listed is for a purpose.
Over 65-star reviews for the lotion alone. Not influencers, not actors, just people whose skin finally shut up. Soft disclosure lotion. Once you try it, you'll understand why people won't stop talking about it. Visit softdisclosure.com and use code Badlands and get 10% off.
What is the Sovereign Alliance? The Sovereign Alliance are a collection of leaders and countries that are aligned not in the vision for their countries, but against a vision that has been thrust upon them. I believe that the Sovereign Alliance is less a battle for something and more a battle against something. They are against globalism, collectivism. They are against the rules-based international order.
Sovereign Alliance, the latest addition to Badlands Rise merch, available now at badlandsmedia.tv/rise.
Maha yourself with supplements that don't suck from Conscious Strength. Founded by Badlands' very own Jordan Sather in 2019, Conscious Strength products are made in America and won't break your bank, unlike other online brands. Their lineup includes collagen for strengthening joints and hair, electrolytes to get rid of those cramps, green powders that taste good and mix is easy, Shilajit gummies, methylene blue, zeolite, and more. Flip the finger to pharma, be your own doctor, and get supplements that you can trust from Conscious Strength. Go to badlandsmedia.tv/strength to shop now. One more time, that's badlandsmedia.tv/strength. The link will be in the description below.
All right, we've had enough. For centuries, men have been discriminated against, overlooked, and just downright forgotten. On Valentine's Day, men have bought chocolate, flowers, cards, and presents for the lady in their life, while men have got neglected. Never fear, ladies. This Valentine's, show the man you love you haven't forgotten him with a gift from Manly Cans. Manly Cans are gift cans for men, featuring local products and reusable packaging, with nationwide shipping and local delivery. Give that special man in your life the perfect Valentine's gift from manlycans.com.
She's standing by the river. She is with some fine young handsome man. You see, he's all dressed just like a squire. He's got Lake whiskey in his hand.
All right. Welcome back to Geopolitical Ghost. I am your host, Gordon McCormick. This is the second hour, February 3rd, 2026. Shout out to Mama T. I see your rant. Let me pull that up. $50. Big Mama T, thank you so much. Very, very generous. Thanks, Gordo. I'm guesstimating based on my own experience with research that it takes 5 to 6 hours of reading / searching to prep for a show. Thank you. Much appreciated. Yeah, that's probably about accurate. Yeah, it's and you know, to make sure that the thoughts I put together are more than just like kind of reading the articles. It's like trying to put a little bit of critical thinking behind it. Doesn't mean I'm always right, and I'm probably not more often than I am, but I really appreciate that. Thank you for your generous rant. Bless you. So let's get back to what we were looking at, which was Gustavo Petro. Let's see if this is some good high comedy. He says, this is from yesterday. I begin my intense day of communication with the government of the United States with my interview with the U.S. commercial representative in Colombia, McNamara. Before this meeting, I went to visit my mom to say goodbye. I leave you this photo of my mom before she got married and of her love with my father, from which I came. It's foolish for Francoist types. Am I saying that right? Francois types. To think that talking about sex and love is sinful when it is the great driving force of Colombia. Love protects us, and one of the emotions most deeply felt by Colombian identity is love for our children and the reproduction of life. Healthy sexuality is fundamental. Sexuality will never be as intense as when it is done with love in the heart. We are protected by the chain of affections and the certainty of love. May the Plaza de Bolivar fill up on Tuesday, if it doesn't rain, to defend democracy, the living wage, and peace in Colombia while I meet with Trump. May the Plaza de Bolivar in Bogota and the public squares across the country fill with affection, culture, and love. All right, so I think after reading that, I'm officially designating Gustavo Petro as Pepe Le Pew. He kind of has that like svelte, like Pepe Le Pew, like Frenchman vibe about him, even though I recognize that he's Hispanic. He still has that like Pepe Le Pew vibe about him. So I'm definitely going to start calling him Pepe Le Pew. Maybe if I can figure out a way to put a Spanish or Hispanic twist on it, I'll figure that out. But for now, he's Pepe Le Pew, because that is hilarious that he's talking about like healthy sexuality, posting pictures of his mom. I don't think it's creepy, by the way. Like I don't take it that way. I genuinely take it as like he's a lover, not a fighter, right? All right. The second of command of the Gulf clan, alias Gonzalito, has drowned to death. This is another post from him. His body will be handed over by the indigenous communities to the OAS and to the 11th Brigade, which I have ordered to collect the corpse. Gonzalito. Okay. That's interesting. Interesting timing for that. The day, I guess this is from 2 days ago, not yesterday. It says, but 2 days before he goes to meet with Trump, the second in command of the Gulf Clan, the largest cocaine cartel in Colombia, drowns to death. He reposts the president of the republic, Petro Gustavo, will carry out a state agenda in Washington, D.C. between February 2nd and 5th. During the development of this agenda, the head of state will hold an institutional meeting on February 3rd at the White House with the president of the United States, Donald Trump, as part of the Spaces for Dialogue between the two countries. So this is one of four. Let me see if it has extra. All right, the second post says the activities of this international agenda are oriented toward political, academic, and political dialogue within the framework of the state's foreign policy and the national interests. Number three, the agenda will also be focused on institutional relations between Colombia and the United States. And then number four, through our official channels, the development of the agenda will be announced in a timely and verified manner. So this is from a account called the Presidencia Colombia. So it says the official account of the president of the Republic of Colombia. Okay, you get a follow. Oh, look at this. All right, so we do have some content here from them. All right, so looks like we have, this is from 6 hours ago, from the Ministry of Defense for Colombia. It says, Colombia does not bow to drug trafficking nor to the drug lords. Whoever commits crimes does not go unpunished. The arm of the law will reach them wherever they try to hide. In compliance with the presidential order, today the dangerous criminal Andres Felipe Marin Silva, alias Pipi Tulia. Wait, his name is Pipi Tulia? Somebody please tell me if I'm saying this right. It's spelled P-I-P-E. Is that not Pipi? Is it Pipey? Pipi Tulia, I think is his name. If that's his name, that is laugh out loud funny. The drug lord's name is Pipi Tulia. It's not Pepe because that would be P-E-P-E. It's got to be Pipi or Pipe. Maybe it's Pipe. Pipe is even funnier, but Pipe Tulia was extracted or was extradited to the United States, requested by the Eastern District Court of Texas on charges of international drug trafficking. The extradition was carried out by the Policia Colombia in coordination with the Fiscalia Colombia and U.S. agencies. Alias Pipe Tulia is identified as a leader of the criminal organization La Immaculado. I think it's the Immaculate? I think it's the Immaculate. The transfer was conducted under a high security operation with 70 uniformed officers from specialized units such as the Division Policia and the Special Operations Group in less than 30 minutes from the Los Martires police station to El Dorado Airport with support from aerial capabilities and Interpol. This result reaffirms the Colombian state's commitment to the frontal fight against transnational organized crime and sends a clear message: there is no refuge for those who seek to expand drug trafficking and violence beyond our borders. Wow. All right, well, pour one out for Pipe Tulia. I'm not going to be able to stop saying that name. That name is laugh out loud funny that some guy, a drug lord, willingly refers to himself as Pipe. All right. So the next post from this account is surrounded by the chain of affections from his family. Surrounded by the chain of affections from his family. Colombians in the national cabinet, President Gustavo Petro heads to the White House to meet with President Trump. Quote, the fight against drug trafficking, we have truly suffered it, and it's not just talk. I've dedicated 15 years of my life to debates that you've heard about this struggle.
No era. Y entonces repartidos en el mundo porque es el producto lamentable de un exilio de todos mis hijos, la mayoría, que se debe a la lucha contra el narcotráfico.
I feel like when you want to act like you're speaking Spanish if you don't really know how to speak Spanish. Entonces is definitely a good vocabulary word to say. This guy is 100% Pepe Le Pew. I'm sure these are probably his daughters, I imagine. Maybe his wife, but probably his daughters. And this guy is 100% Pepe Le Pew. Like, I'm just going to keep calling him that. Okay, so then they have greeting in the, and by the way, like these posts that they're laying out, like right before he goes and meets with Trump, definitely is signaling that this meeting with Trump is going to be about the drug cartels. I think that's what is going to end up coming out of all this. Interesting that they're not like live streaming the meeting, but you know, that could be an act of respect from Trump's side. Like he's not going to be putting Gustavo Petro on the spot, and he wants to have substantive conversations without the media in the room, without like, you know, news cameras in the room to distract. It says greeting in the East Room of the White House between the Colombian head of state Gustavo Petro and the President Donald Trump prior to their private meeting. All right. So then the next post we get is, all right, so they're reposting the picture of the two of them speaking in the Oval Office. And then kind of just another post of them walking down the colonnade with all the pictures of the presidents. Here's another picture from the White House of Gustavo Petro in deep thought while Trump's talking to him. I hope videos of this come out. I want to hear what they're talking about. All right, and then here is a signed picture. You come and see the president, and they present you with a signed picture. How quickly did they get this thing developed? They must have a printer right there where they take the picture, and this is like going to no disrespect to anybody involved, but like it's like you go to like Disney World, and they take the picture of you and they print it out right there, and it's sitting there waiting for you when you get off the ride. They have the picture of him and President Trump, and then it says, Gustavo, a great honor. I love Colombia. Like, yeah. So like this is a total whitewashing of like the narrative that Gustavo Petro was evil. Remember 4 weeks ago, when Trump was like, he better watch his ass or he's going to be next. And I was like, this is total kayfabe, absolute kayfabe. Look, they're obviously having a chuckle here. They're having a laugh. I don't see what's his name? Secretary of Defense in the room. So there's obviously no Pentagon presence here, at least not the Secretary of Defense. Yeah, that's really, really interesting. And then let me just see if Gustavo Petro posted anything else. I don't think he did. Oh, wait a second. He did post something else. All right. 36 minutes ago. What did Trump mean to say to me in this dedication? I don't understand English very well. So Trump obviously gave him an Art of the Deal, a copy of the Art of the Deal. And he signed it with an inscription that says, "You are great, Donald Trump." And Gustavo Petro is asking everybody, what does this mean? I'm gonna go ahead and repost this. Gustavo Petro with that coy sense of humor. And then his pinned post is from yesterday, and it says, February 3rd, no more lies, no more merchants of politics and law stealing the rights away from the people, no more power to those who want to steal the elections by preventing people from participating. Let's participate, let's vote, let's sign, and let's win for a Colombia that progresses, loves, and is beautiful. I'll be waiting for you tomorrow to shout Colombia Libre all over the world. We are going for a pact for life in the Americas, in the world, and in Colombia. So that's an interesting line right there.
Con diálogo, afecto y compromiso a su presidente en la defensa de la soberanía y los intereses nacionales. La democracia se fortalece cuando el pueblo se expresa de manera.
I need a translator to translate what's being said here, although I can kind of figure out a lot of it. But entonces. This right here, though, a pact for life in the Americas, all capitalized. I wonder, let me search for that. I wonder if we're going to see something like that emerge. I mean, if Trump comes out and says, I'm announcing the pact for life in the Americas. Huh. Okay, so according to Google or whatever search engine Brave uses, the term pact for life in the Americas most prominently refers to the Pacto pela Vida, a state-level public security program in Brazil aimed at reducing homicides and violent crime. Launched in the 2000s, the initiative integrated efforts between police forces, the judiciary, and government agencies to improve criminal investigations and reduce impunity. Another relevant agenda in the region is the Escazú Agreement, a legally binding environmental impact. No, it's not that. Interesting. All right, well, so let's just keep an eye on that. If we get a pact for life from Trump, then we'll know that Gustavo Petro and him are coordinating on a much higher level. But the fact that Trump gave him a signed inscription of the art of the deal and said, "You are great," I don't know. I see some signal there. I see what you're doing, Trump. All right, so let's now pivot to where do we want to go? Well, let's go to India, Pakistan real quick, and then we'll go back to Europe. So before we go to, because I have a few Epstein things I want to talk about. Oh, by the way, I put this in the news brief today, but this is like the Middle East. This is 190,000 followers. Some news outlet on X says breaking with the siren, so you know it's super serious. Israeli media. Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman is considered one of Israel's most formidable emerging adversaries whose rise has disrupted Israel's calculations. I love, I don't know if this, I hate when people post this kind of stuff and they don't cite an article or even a screenshot of an article, but that is a really good way of putting that. His rise has disrupted Israel's calculations, because I think it's 100% right. And I have been saying that I do think we are going to see a slander campaign against MBS and probably against Trump here shortly. But I did see this video. Here's a video.
When Turkish and Saudi.
Let's play this.
It was this April 20.
So this is from April of 2022. This is when MBS started normalizing relations with Turkey.
2022 visit when Turkish and Saudi leadership agreed to pursue what they called a common will, one that creates political, economic, and strategic gains for both. Almost 4 years later, they're fairly satisfied.
Our cooperation with Saudi Arabia, one of the key actors of our region and the Islamic world, both bilaterally and multilaterally, is growing stronger with each passing day. We attach strategic importance to coordination and cooperation with Saudi Arabia on all issues concerning the stability and peace of the Islamic world, especially Gaza.
During his visit to Saudi Arabia, Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan will discuss US President Donald Trump's Board of Peace and a Palestinian state. They'll also analyze Sudan, Syria, and Yemen. Greater security cooperation between Saudi Arabia, Pakistan, and Turkey is also under discussion.
This alliance is more on the form of a political cooperation of these three big conventional armies of the region. I don't think they will completely abandon their alliances with the West or with the NATO, but they will tell to the world that they have always an alternative. They can diversify their military alliances, and if they work together, this is going to bring a massive cooperation in defense, in training, in exchange of military products, and of course, cooperation against insecurity proposed by Israeli settlement in the region. They might help each other in terms of regional deterrence.
Last year, Riyadh signed the biggest defense contract in Turkish history to acquire Bayraktar Akinci drones. And once again this week, they'll discuss not just defense collaboration, but cooperation in other fields, including investment, energy, healthcare, and others. Both sides say there is tremendous potential to expand bilateral relations, but a lot of it is currently untapped, and they want to change that. Hassan Abdullah, TRT World, Riyadh, Saudi Arabia.
Pretty good analysis. Pretty good analysis. I mean, better analysis than I've seen from pretty much like everyone in the West who either is still trapped in the old paradigms of yesteryear or, you know, they're getting swept up in the heat of the moment and, you know, buying into ideas of delusion with, you know, thinking that the plan involves war, right? The plan involves peace. That's what the plan involves. So we should always be looking for those signals. I want to go to this video. So I don't know where this video is from. It was posted today, but it's of the Pakistani prime minister. It says statements of the prime minister of Pakistan. Only Saudi Arabia stood with Pakistan during the sanctions. King Abdullah raised my brother's hand and said, "You are my brother." The kings of Saudi Arabia love our country. Saudi Arabia supported us with free oil. The king ordered investment in Pakistan under the supervision of my brother, the Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. How can they blow poison against them? This is an unforgivable act. I don't know what this is in reference to, but let's just watch the video.
Pakistan.
Okay, so I think I will have to read because he's probably speaking Pakistani or whatever language that is. So let me read what he says. This is the guy, I'm pretty sure this is the guy who was crying in Egypt, like describing President Trump, you know, how happy he was, how much he loved Trump back in September. He says, I, as Prime Minister of Pakistan, announce whosoever will attack Pak-Saudi relationship will be dealt forcefully. When Pakistan became an atomic power, I was with Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif in Saudi Arabia. Late King Abdullah, rest in peace, held the hand of Nawaz Sharif. So I assume this guy must have been a young man when this happened. King Abdullah was the king before MBS's grandfather. I mean, I'm sorry, MBS's father. MBS's father became king in 2015, right? And Abdullah became king, I think, in 2011. He held the hand of Nawaz Sharif. And said, "You are my brother." No, it was definitely earlier than that. It was like 2006. Pretty sure. He reiterated, "You are like a real brother." This shows the love and affection of Saudi king with Pakistan. The translation here is kind of rough. Dude, who is this guy right here on the right? Are y'all seeing this? Is that Lenny Kravitz? Who is that guy? I mean, wearing sunglasses inside, I mean, that's a pretty bold move. I didn't realize that was allowed in Pakistan. Saudi Arabia provided free oil facility to Pakistan after sanctions. That's interesting. I want to look into that. Even during Musharraf's era, Saudi government extended the oil facility to Pakistan. I think he means free oil is what he's saying. During the second tenure of Nawaz Sharif, Saudi Arabia provided $1.5 billion for the people of Pakistan. Current King of Saudi Arabia, King Salman, has always good wishes and sentiments for Pakistan. He is asking investors to go and invest in Pakistan. We have signed billions of dollars of memorandums of understanding and agreements with Saudi Arabia under the supervision of His Royal Highness Crown Prince. Delegations are frequently visiting Pakistan. Saudi Arabia has helped Pakistan an IMF bailout package recently. So I think if I'm reading that correctly, I think what they're saying is that Saudi Arabia came in and paid off their IMF debts. I need to look into that because they definitely did that in Syria. I want to know if they did that in Pakistan as well. It is an unforgivable offense to spew venom on Saudi Arabia despite this much support. So what is he referring to? Is he saying Saudi Arabia is spewing venom, or is he referring to, I don't know. Or is he saying nobody else can spew venom against Saudi Arabia? I got to get more context to that. That's just it's an interesting little development there. But obviously the Pakistan-Saudi Arabia relationship is very strong. Okay. And then I want to look up the Eric Trump statements. Eric Trump, because we have this Saudi Arabia just launched their stock market on Sunday. I know Eric Trump made comments about that, but may not be able to find that exact comment. If not, we'll just do this. We'll just do the stock market story. Okay, so this is from today. Okay, so this would have been, I guess, their third or fourth day of trading. Says Saudi main market edges up to close at 11,328. Saudi Arabia's Tadawul all share index closed slightly higher on Tuesday, rising 0.07% or 7.43 points to finish at 11,328. The parallel Nomu market also gained up 0.11. Yeah, we don't need to read through all the numbers. So it's just kind of running through some stock, but okay, so I'm trying to find the original story. So now, like I feel like all the stories coming out of Saudi Arabia are going to be about their stock market now that they've done this. But yeah, they opened up they launched a stock market on Sunday, and Eric Trump was a big part of that. The Trumps helped them like create this thing. Let me see if I can find the original article that I think we talked about that on Friday, but Saudi financial market launch. Okay, so Saudi exchange Tudawul opens to foreign investors. Until now, only banks and fund managers from abroad were permitted to trade on the relatively closed Saudi exchange in Riyadh. From February 1st, 2026, the largest stock market in the Arab world were also open to foreign retail investors. So yeah, so basically what they're saying is you and I can now go invest in the Saudi stock market. And Eric Trump was pushing this and saying that this is a major development. Everyone should go invest. And yeah, I mean, this is a major shift in the dynamics of. I just saw that Gaddafi's son has just been assassinated. That's concerning. Okay, so now let's go to. With all that said, let's go to, now that we've kind of laid out the Pakistan stuff. Oh yeah, there it is. It's the very top of the. Well, I was going to do the U.S.-India trade deal, and we still will. Let's just look real quick at RT has it as their top headline now. Gaddafi's son assassinated, according to the media. Saif al-Islam Gaddafi was shot in his own garden, a family sources claim. Saif al-Islam Gaddafi, son of Libya's former leader, Muammar Gaddafi, has been assassinated, a source close to the family confirmed to RT on Tuesday. He was killed by 4 people who quickly fled the scene after shooting him in his garden, a family source told Al Arabiya. According to several media reports, for the last several years, Gaddafi had been living in hiding in Libya, In 2015, a Libyan court issued a death sentence in absentia for Saif al-Islam, accusing him of suppressing peaceful protests during the country's 2011 revolution, which led to the downfall of his father's government. That was, by the way, facilitated by ISIS and the Muslim Brotherhood in the CIA and Mossad. He had also been provisionally charged by the International Criminal Court for alleged crimes against humanity. In 2021, Saif al-Islam registered as a candidate for the presidential election scheduled for December, but the vote ultimately fell apart due to a political deadlock. Huh. Okay. Well, that's and this little side story about Epstein. We'll come back to that. All right, U.S.-India trade deal, what we know so far. President Trump has announced a reduced tariff of 18% for New Delhi. Nearly a year after imposing a 50% rate, the U.S.-India deal announced after months of uncertainty is expected to provide an edge to exports, stabilize the rupee, boost investor sentiment, and offer an impetus to the South Asian nation's economy. India will reduce tariffs and non-tariff barriers against the U.S. to zero. U.S. President Donald Trump said when announcing the deal, New Delhi has also committed to Buy American, which includes $500 billion worth of U.S. energy, technology, agriculture, coal, and other products. He claimed India's exports to the U.S. during the April-October 2025 period stood at $52.13 billion. The broad contours include Trump and Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi announced the broad contours of a deal via social media posts on Monday, less than a week after India and the European Union finalized a trade deal on January 27th. Trump's post indicated that India will end Russian oil purchases and will veer toward purchases from the U.S. and potentially Venezuela. Modi made no reference to crude from Russia. While the Trump post did not mention the additional 25% levy imposed for purchases of Russian oil, a White House official confirmed to the Hindustan Times that it will be dropped as part of the agreement and that the final tariff will be 18%. This would be lower than the 19% tariff the U.S. imposed on neighboring Pakistan. Indian Commerce Minister Piyush Goyal has said that the India-U.S. trade deal unlocks the power of two large democracies. It offers unprecedented opportunities for farmers, MSMEs, entrepreneurs, and skilled workers. He said the deal removes the proverbial sword of Damocles that has been hanging over the rupee, as well as the equity and debt markets. Nalish Shah, a fund manager, told media outlets. As a result of the deal, Indian exports to the U.S. now enjoy the second best tariff rate in Asia after Japan. The South Asian nation has previously been stuck with the highest rate, 50% on the continent. U.S. consumers pay a 20% rate for imports from Bangladesh and Vietnam, while goods from Malaysia, Cambodia, and Thailand carry a 19% tariff like those from Pakistan. Among the BRICS nations, the U.S. stuck Brazil with a 50% rate, while the tariff on Chinese imports is 37% and the rate for South Africa is 30%. Washington slapped a 10% rate on products from the UK and a 15% tariff on imports from the EU, Japan, and Switzerland. Yes, it looks like agriculture is part of it. Textiles and apparel. Let's see. Apart from textiles, other notable gainers, labor-intensive sectors, gyms and jewelry, automobiles and ancillaries. Let's see. Jaguar Land Rover, a subsidiary of Tata Motors, has a reported exposure of 33% of its export volumes linked to the U.S. market. Is Jaguar Land Rover based in India? That'd be kind of interesting if it was. I guess maybe it is. Yeah, Tata Motors is an Indian automaker, and I guess Land Rover is a Jaguar Land Rover. That's funny. I used to work for a guy who was very into Land Rovers. He used to like find old ones and restore them. Let's see. So we get gyms and jewelry, industrial collaboration. What is that? Critical minerals, electronics, financial markets, and it talks about cautious optimism. So yeah, I mean it looks like a pretty comprehensive deal. Senator, here's from Brooke Rollins. Brooke Rollins says, Thank you, POTUS, once again for delivering for the American farmers. New U.S.-India deal will export more American farm products to India's massive markets, lifting prices and pumping cash into rural America. In 2024, America's agricultural trade deficit with India was $1.3 billion. India's growing population is an important market for American agricultural products, and today's deal will go a long way to reducing this deficit. America First victory on top of the dozens of deals for ag. Yeah, that is interesting. Okay, so with that, now that we've done that, we can go to Europe and talk about some of this Epstein stuff. Okay, so one of the things that stuck out to me, well, there's this story as well that I just saw that I haven't seen yet before, but might as well note it. Air India orders checks on Boeing Dreamliners. The airline has decided to inspect fuel control switches after a reported malfunction on an aircraft. Okay, so that's not them ordering new Dreamliners. That's them ordering inspections of existing Dreamliners. That's the Boeing 787 plane that they recently launched. It says, quote, following the reported defect involving a fuel control switch on one of the Boeing 787 aircrafts, our engineering team has escalated the matter to Boeing for priority evaluation. In Air India, Boeing 787 crashed into the city of Ahmedabad in western India last June, which left 260 dead, had raised concerns about a probable switch malfunction. Yeah, y'all should probably get that figured out. That would be my recommendation. Okay, so let's go back to this story. This is interesting. Germany dumping France for Italy, according to the Telegraph. Berlin and Rome have reportedly aligned to reshape European policy. Germany is moving to deepen ties with Italy as tensions rise with France over EU trade policy. Emmanuel Macron's looming exit in relations with U.S. President Donald Trump, the Telegraph reported on Monday, citing diplomats from the bloc. France and Germany have long been the engine of EU policymaking, but the outlet described Macron as a lame duck whose mandate ends in 2027. That's interesting because that's exactly what Trump said about him recently, right? Says, quote, Berlin needs partners it can work with. Can they work with Macron at the moment? Not really. He is leaving office soon and France is unstable. Germans hate instability. An EU diplomat told the outlet. According to the report, German Chancellor Friedrich Merz has approached Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni. By the way, look at this picture of Merz kissing Meloni, and look how horrified her face is. She does not look like. And then you got Macron here, just being the cuck, sitting in the cuck chair, just getting nothing. According to the report, German Chancellor Friedrich Merz has approached Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni with proposals to restructure Europe. The plan envisions a multi-speed Europe in which a core group of member states, including Germany, Italy, Poland, Spain, the Netherlands, and France, can advance policies more quickly and bypass EU bureaucracy, although sources said not all 27 EU members are expected to join. Italian officials said privately that the accord, which focuses on cooperation between Italy and Germany on defense, migration, and trade, shows a new center of gravity inside the EU, the British paper said. France and Germany have long clashed over EU governance, with Paris advocating greater borrowing and centralization, while Berlin resists due to its reliance on exports to the U.S. During Trump's Greenland dispute, Macron urged the bloc to use its trade bazooka, referring to the EU's anti-coercion instrument, a measure never before invoked. Merz criticized the move, citing German business interests, and also expressed frustration at Macron's inability to implement reforms amid a divided parliament and public resistance. France's instability is compounded by economic strain. Last year, the budget deficit reached 5.8% of GDP, above the EU target of 3%. By early 2025, public debt stood at 3.3 trillion euros, or 114% of GDP. In January, the government approved of the 2026 budget using a constitutional provision allowing laws to pass without a parliamentary vote. Both right-wing and left-wing parties have signaled plans for a no-confidence motion. The EU as a whole faces economic pressure from high energy costs after phasing out Russian oil and gas following the 2022 escalation of the Ukraine conflict. Increased reliance on the U.S. LNG has pushed prices higher. Germany's economy contracted in 2023 and 2024, with officials linking the slowdown to energy costs. In January, the German Chamber of Commerce and Industry cited the surge in prices as a factor behind spikes in bankruptcies. Yeah, I mean, we talked about that report when that report came out, how Germany was facing like an all-time high in businesses declaring bankruptcy. And when Trump negotiated that deal with them last year, I want to say it was last May, which basically said that Europe was going to buy U.S. LNG out of Texas and Louisiana for good. I said that's going to drive up the cost of their energy because you got to pay for the LNG to be turned from natural gas into liquid and then turned back into natural gas once it gets to Europe. So yeah, that's going to be crazy expensive. I did just see this article right here. I just saw that post before we went live. Here's that post right here. Here's the video of Pedro Sanchez, who's the Spanish prime minister. And he says, starting next week, my government will implement the following actions. First, we will change the law in Spain to hold platform executives legally accountable for many infringements taking place on their sites. Second, we will turn algorithmic manipulation and amplification of illegal content into a new criminal offense. Third, we will implement a hate and polarization footprint system to track, quantify, and expose how digital platforms fuel division and amplify hate. Fourth, Spain will ban access to social media for minors under the age of 16. Platforms will be required to implement effective age verification systems, not just checkboxes, but real barriers that work. Fifth and last, my government will work with our public prosecutor to investigate and pursue the infringement committed by Grok, TikTok, and Instagram. So yeah, a lot of that sounds pretty totalitarian. I agree with some of it. I mean, I agree with like kids not using social media. That's probably a positive, but good luck enforcing that. But yeah, so Italy pivoting or Germany pivoting to Italy from France is interesting because of the reason I wanted to bring that up is because of this email that I found in the Epstein files. Let me see if I can pull this up. All right, save this. I'm going to pull up this picture on... I thought it'd be easier to pull this picture up from my Telegram, but it's not. So just hold on. I got to save it and then open it in Brave. Computers thinking, computers thinking, computers thinking. Here it is. All right. So here's another email from Larry Summers to Jeffrey Epstein. This is Thursday, February 21st, 2013. And the subject is response to your question from last week. And I guess the question must have been about the Vatican and Pope Benedict. And the reason that this is interesting, and way too many tabs open. Now my computer's not even letting me look at my tabs. Okay, so before I'm not even gonna try to switch tabs. I'm just gonna talk about this. It says this is the email. It says the most important change in the Vatican may not be Pope Benedict the 16th sudden retirement, but the change in leadership at, quote, the Institute for Works of Religion, the Vatican's bank. Because of the Vatican's status as a sovereign country, it is exempt from transparency rules of not only Italy, but of the European Union. This status allows its elite clients to evade any scrutiny in their money transfers. Last May, Vatican Bank President Ettore Gotti Tedeschi was fired after Italian authorities opened an investigation into a far-flung bribery scheme in which he was allegedly involved. Then 47 dossiers, including compromising about internal enemies of his in the Vatican, were found in a search of his home. They had instructions how they were used in case something happened to him. Tedeschi's intercepted calls further revealed that his concern was that he would be assassinated because he knew the Vatican's secrets. By late 2012, he was cooperating with the ongoing Italian investigation. It was at this point that the all-powerful College of Cardinals, in one of the last acts in the Benedict papacy, appointed German lawyer Ernst von Freiberg as president of the bank. Then came the extraordinary resignation of Pope Benedict. Okay, so that's interesting because the timing of this, the timing of all this is like, man, the timing of this is pretty wild. So this is 2013, 2012, 2013. Pope Benedict resignation. Because what this is kind of, I mean, what this is alluding to is a cleansing potentially of the Vatican. And if you watched the Book of Trump, the Dennis Rodman episode, this gambling website that Dennis Rodman got involved in, this is the gambling website that that paid for him to go to North Korea to meet with Kim Jong-un in 2013. They also, they used like gimmicky marketing schemes to kind of like go viral, right? And so one of their marketing schemes was gambling on who the next pope was going to be in relation to, so like here, Pope Benedict resigned from the papacy on February 28, 2013, becoming the first pope to do so voluntarily since Celestine V in 1294, and the first to do it in over 600 years. He announced his decision on February 11th, citing deteriorating health issues due to old age, declining physical and mental strength, and an inability to fulfill the demanding responsibilities of the office. So this email from Larry Summers kind of implies that there was more to it than just that. It wasn't just because of his declining health. It was because there's like investigations happening by Italian authorities into the Vatican and the Vatican Bank. And that's what led to his resignation. And, there's a lot of like Italy is a really interesting place from the Sovereign Alliance standpoint, because Dennis Rodman goes there like right after he comes back from North Korea. I thought that was kind of strange. That was kind of notable. We learned that Russia was putting money into basically was funneling money into Italy in 2015 and 2016 to start this political, like populist political movement that would basically that would lead to like an identical MAGA campaign where they literally like copy pasted Trump's MAGA, like his graphics, even like they were reusing his graphics. And that was that Matteo Silvia, I think is his name. He was the one who ran for prime minister. Silvia is now Giorgia Meloni's vice president or whatever, deputy prime minister, right? So really, there's interesting collaboration happening there between Russia and Italy with the populist movement. And the fact that the Vatican might have been cleaned out by Italian authorities. Remember last year and a half ago, I guess now, October, November 2024, there was like a sting operation that they ran out of Milan where these former Italian intelligence guys who, like were retired Italian intelligence who had started their own private intelligence firm. They had been hired by Mossad to hack into the Italian servers in order to get intel on Putin and Putin's friends, but also on Giorgia Meloni. And they were caught like red-handed doing that, and they were all arrested, along with some Mossad. There were some Mossad guys with them who were also arrested. And that was signaled to me at the time that there was a rift between Putin / Meloni, and Netanyahu. I mean, if Netanyahu was sending Mossad up there to gather intel on Putin and his friends, but also on Meloni, then obviously they were planning to blackmail, I think, Putin and or any of his friends, any of the people in his inner circle, or try to blackmail Meloni. So again, this is like the cat and mouse game that at these levels they play in. And I don't know, there's just something about there's a signal to me that the Vatican might have been cleaned out in 2013. I don't really know what to make of it. There's also this email. Very strange. Like, this is one that really needs to be run down. Let me pull this one up. I have no idea what to make of this email. This is from December 25th, 2018. Well, before that, Friday, December 21st, 2018, Larry Summers writes, again, Larry Summers and Jeffrey Epstein emailing a lot. And he says, will call tonight or at some point, will you be visiting, talking to Jeffrey Epstein, Mar-a-Lago? And Jeffrey Epstein replies and just says, 4 days later, he just replies and says, being asked for 3 names to replace Mnuchin. And I assume he's talking about Steve Mnuchin, the Secretary of the Treasury, being asked for 3 names, like 3 candidates to potentially replace Steve Mnuchin, and then being asked by Larry Summers, will you be visiting Mar-a-Lago? Very strange, because my understanding is, the official narrative is that Jeffrey Epstein was banned from Mar-a-Lago by Trump many, many years ago. And the implication here is that somebody is asking Jeffrey Epstein to, or at least according to Jeffrey Epstein, to provide suggestions for a new Secretary of Treasury. Don't know what to make of it. Don't know what to make of it at all. But, and again, these emails could be bullshit. Somebody could have just made these, generated these things up. It did come out of the file from the DOJ, but is it real? Like, did somebody at the DOJ or FBI or whatever throw this in there? I don't know. I don't know what to make of it. It's just one of those things where it's notable and we kind of file it away and we wait and see what happens. But the Italy thing is way more interesting to me than that, the Vatican. So, and that timeline, the 2012, something about 2012, I think, is when that was like an inflection point. That was like the turning point when if there is some sort of a patriot plan or a populist revolution, that was when the plan was implemented, or at least we start to see some things materialize. I'm starting to question a lot of the things that we have been told, like the Benghazi attack, by the way. When you stop and think about what that was, an attack on a CIA base, a secret CIA base that was trafficking weapons that ultimately were going to ISIS. And, we're presented, like the story that's presented to us is that a bunch of bad guys came and attacked a bunch of Americans in a compound. But if you kind of take a step back and look at it, maybe they were bad guys who attacked them, but a bunch of CIA agents who were trafficking weapons to ISIS were attacked at their compound in September of 2012. Like good Americans died in that attack, right? The retired special forces guys, but I don't know. I'm just questioning all this stuff now, and what actually was behind it, and I don't know. It's hard to make sense of it all. But anyway, we'll land it there. We'll land it there for today. Let's check in and see if we got any rants or questions from people. Looks like the chat's being goofy. Golf clap. Sorry, I'm not. Here we go. Cindy Waters, $1. There are reports that Gaddafi's son Saif al-Islam has been assassinated. Yeah, just read that. Yeah, we just read that article. Nothing. Yeah. So the report is that he's dead, but we don't know anything else beyond that. So, Villas $34, $2. It's Petro Le Pew. Okay, I like that. Petro Le Pew. So instead of Pepe Le Pew, it's Petro Le Pew. Like that a lot. Okay. Oh yeah. And by the way, I see somebody in there talking about Substack. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to start doing. So like we have a new format on the Badlands News Brief where we're basically trying to edge out the box out the MSM. So instead we used to take individual news articles and then we would kind of like take a blurb from their write-up and use that as like our presentation for like, here's the story. And then we would write a take underneath it. So instead of like allowing the MSM to kind of set the narrative, what we do now is we compile several stories on a particular topic. and then we've developed a GBT, which is like a, you use the AI to create a specific, I don't know what the word is, but a GPT where you put data into it and then it spits out a specific thing. So it knows to spit out a list of facts. Like it extracts all the facts from the articles we give it, and then it organizes those facts into like an AP style write up where it's just giving you the facts. It's not giving you any bias. It's not giving you any opinion, any of that stuff. And then we use that write up now with the, like with our take. So what's missing from that, there's two things that I think are lost from the geopolitical element of that. The first is that because we're doing the idea is to do less takes, like to consolidate it down into less, to kind of focus on narratives as opposed to chasing like individual storylines. And I think that makes a lot of sense, especially when you're talking about the domestic stuff where you have a lot of just like shiny objects and BS narratives coming out. But geopolitically, there'll be a lot of like one-off stories. Like you'll get like a random story from North Korea, or a random story from South Korea, or a random story from Japan. And I can't quite like throw that random story in with, 4 other stories about the Middle East or 4 other stories about Africa. So that one story ends up not getting like included in the news brief. Whereas before this new format, I was able to kind of like grab a story about North Korea, a story about Africa, a story about Europe, right? So that's a little unfortunate. I do kind of miss that part of it. So I think what I'm going to start doing is I'm going to do the old format with Geopolitics where I just look at like individual stories and do it like a take on each one. And I'm going to launch that on my own Substack, which I haven't used my Substack in like 2 or 3, like since I started at Badlands. So for those of you who have subscribed to my Substack, I appreciate that. Let me show you what that is. I think I have that pulled up right here. This is before I had the Substack before I had my Rumble account. And so it's not Ghost of Base Patrick Henry, it's Ghost of Patrick Henry. Because before I was Ghost of Base Patrick Henry, before I was Ghost of Base Patrick Henry, I was just Ghost of Patrick Henry. And then when I went to create my Rumble account, that name was already taken. So I just had to add another word in. So it's GOPH, which is a little confusing, .substack.com. So look for that. I'm going to try to maybe get my first one out tomorrow. And then I'll try to do maybe a few updates a week, like a few of these geopoliticals. So if you subscribe, it'll land in your email address. It's free to subscribe. I'll put the link to this in the comments, but this kind of gives me my own way of kind of just tracking random news events that aren't going to necessarily be big enough of storylines to make it into the news brief, which is really more about tracking narratives than tracking like individual random stories. So like this Gaddafi's son being assassinated, that's not something that's necessarily going to fit into a larger framework, like the Iran storyline, but that is interesting and it's noteworthy, and that gives me an opportunity to kind of talk about Libya or talk about Gaddafi or whatever. So those are the opportunities that I think, those are the gaps, so to speak, that I think are there, that we'll probably try to fill. So it will end up probably being a more random assortment of stories rather than focusing on the big stories, which will be in the news brief. But anyway, for those who are interested, I will throw this in the chat. And yeah, guys, just hit the thumbs up. And we appreciate that. I'm going to put it in right here. So for free. All right, that's done. I'm going to throw it in the chat. And with that said, I'm going to go cue the music and we'll get out of here. Tomorrow, Breaking History with Matt Ehret, noon Eastern, and we'll see you then. Everyone have a great day, and we'll see you then.
Thank you so much for joining us, and don't forget to hit the thumbs up on this video. And a special thank you to all of our advertising partners. Please remember to shift your dollars to support those businesses that support Badlands Media.